All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ad Hoc Site Evaluation Committee meeting. Hope everybody enjoyed their holiday weekend. And excuse me, and let's begin the meeting at 5:32. First of all, call to order, please, Emily. A roll call.
Chair Askey,
Here.
Vice Chair Hefty,
Present.
Committee Member Krasinski,
Here.
Committee Member Ward, Committee Member Chiarello,
Here.
Committee Member Gray, Committee Member Batra,
Here.
all committee members present.
Thank you, Emily. Is Terrence with us tonight on Zoom?
Yes, he's here on Zoom as well.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, well, let's start with item number 2, oral communications for items not on the agenda. You see anybody with a hand raised? Okay, moving on. Item number 3, the approval of the January 7th, 2025 minutes. And I just want to take a second to recognize Patty for such detailed minutes. Thank you. Okay, so does anybody have any comments or changes to the minutes?
I did. I was gonna ask if we could delete under Alpine Corridor, Los Trancos Skyline, the line Fogarty is, let's see, what is the line? But it must benefit them as well. I thought that was maybe a little bit of an overinterpretation of what their intention is. And eliminate, they do not need housing for their workers, but are willing to look at housing for other area farm workers to say, support workforce housing on Skyline in general. As the intent of what the Fogartys. I thought it was an unfair representation, and I may have said it, but it doesn't reflect what the intention of the potential participant was. I would just delete as being irrelevant, from but to farm workers in the second sentence. And if you wanted to put in, they support farm worker housing on Skyline in general, I think that's more to the point.
Okay, because I do think it's important that people understand that this wouldn't be workforce housing for Fogarty.
Right.
And that was an important point. So
But
why
that
don't,
came over too strongly because of whatever.
okay,
whatever
so
reason.
if everybody's okay, we could say Fogarty is very supportive of what the town is trying to do, period. They do not need housing for their workers, but are very supportive of local workforce housing. Okay. Okay. Any
I
other?
think it's an overreach to say, I guess I was hoping you'd take out, they do not need housing for their workers in case they did at some point need housing for their workers. And people might come back and say, well,
Okay,
I mean,
well,
why would we need to say that?
how about at this point in time, they do not want housing for their workers? Okay.
Can I just add something to that, which is that the reason that seemed relevant at the time is that that was when we thought the property was in the Williamson Act, which meant that we needed to find out if a compatible use was housing for workers elsewhere. So it was a relevant question at the time. It's just that that's changed now.
Yeah, and I do think it's important that the minutes reflect what we said in that particular meeting. And things change. Things are going to get updated, and that's totally okay.
I agree.
Okay. Any other comments on the minutes? I had a couple very minor ones and I know. Again, this is very minor and we don't have to do it. If we wanted to indicate that Terrence was attended via Zoom, very minor, but just clarifying that he was not here in the schoolhouse. Under 4A, again, very minor, refer to the AHSEC master site list. Again, we don't need to do that. And then the last one is on page 3 of 5 at the top. And it's just a typo. It says, second line says, the church didn't not understand they could support VL1, but that's supposed to be VLI. Extremely minor. Thank you, Patty. Any other comments?
I move to approve
Second? Approve as amended.
as amended.
Yes.
We will, Chair Karenowski?
Yes.
Yes. Vice Chair Hapti?
Yes.
Committee Member Krasinski?
Yes.
Committee Member Ward?
Yes.
Committee Member Chiarello?
Yes.
Committee Member Gray? Committee Member Batra?
Yes.
Passes all.
Okay, thank you. Next up is to review number 4, item number 4, to review the updated timeline. And the only update to this is that we inserted going to the town council meeting in February. And that date has been, I believe we are on the agenda for February 26th, Wednesday, February 26th. And I just wanted to make sure when with the timeline, if everybody is comfortable with what we have in there and when rezoning would need to occur and such. It does not, somebody had mentioned rezoning in May, and that is actually accurate. So I just wanted to make sure that we were all up to speed on that.
Timeline, oh, it's 26, is that what it is?
Page 26.
I mean, I think what's not in here is staff time to sort of implement a revision to the housing element. That'll kind of have to happen between the TC action at the end of May here and then the planning commission review. But I guess you could maybe consider it part of the planning commission time.
Well, Terrence, let's defer to you on that. When you look at this timeline and you look at what staff time may be necessary.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I didn't hear the question very well. Is there a chance it could be summarized?
Yeah, I was just noting that on the timeline that we have, it appears to be missing some staff time to kind of implement a draft revised housing element, kind of probably between the town council providing their directive and then planning commission review, or perhaps as part of planning commission process.
It would be the June through August block. Does
Yeah,
that include?
Yeah, that's minimal time because we would have the we would start working on the revision while it was in process. We wouldn't wait until the council took action before we started doing the work. So the time taken by staff to prepare it would be minimal. I mean, minimal time frame. We would take time to do it, but we would do it while we're waiting for agendas to move up and so on and so forth.
Don't you need the town council action to know what sites to work on?
Well, we would have a staff recommendation and we'd work on that. We'd have your recommendation and the planning commission recommendation, and we'd be working based on that. And then, of course, we would adjust it if the council took a different tack.
Okay, so the June through August timeframe right now seems reasonable to you.
Yes,
All right, thank you, Terrence.
no problem.
Ronnie?
I guess maybe you could note something about staff time during, in that box.
I suppose I was just wondering whether, why that planning commission and public review couldn't be moved up a little bit if I mean, potentially we could have this done in March, and then be starting that program in April.
This is Terrence. I'm still unmuted, I believe. That we need time to do the environmental document. Most of
Where
that
is in this timeline, do you think?
review amendments to mitigated negative declaration and zoning changes. That's in the June to August timeframe.
I think, Mary, I think what you're saying is if we got done sooner,
Right.
could we move things up?
Yeah.
Is that,
That's what
and
I'm
the
saying.
answer is, we did discuss that in an earlier meeting. This is our worst case scenario.
Right.
And if we do have something sooner, we could move the timeline up. Any other questions or comments about the timeline? Okay. Great. Moving on. Item 5, we have A is site. Oh. Thank you, Karen. Do we have any public comments regarding either item 3, the approval of minutes, or item 4? Well, yeah, or item 4, the timeline.
No hands are raised at this time.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, now moving on to item 5, on site updates. One of the things I would like to do is flip the order just a little bit between 2 and 3. So we would start with Portola Alpine Corners, and then we would go to Portola Corridor Town Center, and we'll end with Alpine Los Trancos Skyline, because I think that will be a better segue to the next item. So opening the floor to the Portola Alpine Corners, and if you have any updates you'd like to share.
We have
Well-
no updates.
Carter, do you have anything?
No, actually, I've, reached out, to the properties that I was assigned to reach out to without response.
I do have one question. We had on our, and it was in the minutes, that somebody would reach out to Roberts again, and I was wondering if that, I'm not sure anyone got assigned to that.
I don't believe, our committee actually did the follow-up on that.
Okay, so that's still on the list
That
then.
might have been me that was supposed to do, just thinking, because I had it, her information, and or maybe I didn't. Maybe I was waiting for Carter. I'll find it. Thank you. Thank you for the reminder, everyone.
Okay. Let's move on then to Portola Corridor Town Center. And I have just very quick updates. I had a very informal discussion with Tricia Christensen of Christ Church, and they are actually getting designs done for units to see what they could do. So they are moving forward, and they are looking at different areas of the site, including that back parking lot area next to El Mirador and Town Center, as well as perhaps somewhere else on the site. But they're nowhere near being able to share anything final. Mary, you had a conversation with an owner, I believe, of around a 2.5 acre lot, and the door is, I will say, ajar, certainly not wide open, but the conversation was started. Yeah, we've jammed our foot in the door and we're hoping that she can't push it back.
No, it's
Yeah.
not like that.
Good
It's,
analogy.
it's not like that. Yes, I'm in conversation with one person and with one organization. And I'll have that. I'll know what the outcome is by 2 weeks, by the next meeting.
Okay, all right. And then, the last thing I just wanted to share is that I did have a meeting with a former board member of Mid-Penn Housing, a recent board member, and talked at a very high level about what we were trying to do here. And, 50 units is not a lot for a low-income developer, but she said it was doable. And also I asked about multiple sites in Portola Valley, spreading it out and getting to that level. And the answer was, in her mind, it's difficult, but depending on the sites, the fact that things are so close together in Portola Valley, it's possible because you might be able to use the same staff and services and all of that between the sites if you had somebody like Mid-Penn there. So I did want to share that because it was a conversation I had, and I'm trying to share the information from all the conversations. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that.
Is Mid-Penn Housing, sort of county government or is it a private?
It's a nonprofit organization that focuses on affordable housing, and they do the building, the services, and one other arm, the development, I think the placement, and then the services that might go along with that.
And management.
Yeah, management.
And
Yeah,
management.
they're sort of a turnkey provider.
No,
No, it's
Mid-Penn Housing.
Mid-Penn Housing. Yes. Good question. Okay, any other?
Oh, I would ask whether that, having them come talk to us would be useful for us. Or for, or whether we could ask, maybe even ask the town council whether that, well, I don't think that that's appropriate as much as, yeah, just a question. And the segue is that I'm talking to Habitat for Humanity on Friday.
Okay,
And I'm inviting anybody who wants to come, who's, as long as it doesn't go over one subcommittee, maybe?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm just asking if I can invite people
Yeah, but you said as long as it doesn't go over. and
over the
then-
subcommittees?
Quorum.
Yeah, quorum.
Oh, a
We don't wanna have a
quorum. Yeah,
quorum of-
yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
All right. Well, if you,
Karen can't come, I believe. No?
no, this Friday?
It's now Friday, February. It's February. It's not this Friday, next Friday.
Yeah, Mary, why don't you send something out to folks about that?
How do I do that? No, I can't do that.
I thought you could do it to arrange a meeting.
Ah,
I'm sorry.
have to be
We'll-
very
we-
careful.
Okay, we will check into that and you may get something and
Okay,
you
it's
may not.
11 o'clock on Friday, February 7th. In the Heritage Room.
Okay,
Meeting with Maureen, who is the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity. That's me personally. I reached out by myself, and I was inviting I suppose I would invite, I invited Karen. She can come. Karen V, would you like to come? Karen V.
I'll go. I can go.
What, okay.
What was the answer? I didn't hear.
I said I can go, so we could have a third person could join us.
Oh, okay. Well, we can't have a third person if it's not, because I think we've got it
It doesn't
now.
have to be a subcommittee. It can be.
Yeah, this is a-
three
this-
individual people, as long as we're not a quorum.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Three-
have to be from one
Right.
group.
3
Okay,
people on this committee.
great. Karen said yes. It'll be very interesting regardless, because she's a wonderful person.
Okay, well, people can check their calendars. It's possible that my plans will be changing, so I'll let you know. It's possible. I'm not going to get into the details of that. Okay,
Ask one
Oh,
other question.
sure.
So for Christ Church, do you think we're expecting to get more information within our timeline, and or do you think we need more information?
Are you talking about a timeline by the time we get to the town council at the end of February?
I mean, either February or May.
Okay, I cannot give you 100% guarantee on anything because I'm conjecturing, but I would be hopeful that definitely by May, they will have an understanding of what they can do and what they want to do.
You think, like, let's say we wanted to reclassify units as, let's say we wanted 10 very low income units there, if we wanted to recommend that, do you think we need to kind of wait until May to get that level of buy-in from them, or that we already have it?
You know, Ronnie, I wish I could answer this question. It was a very informal conversation and it was, we're getting these designs and we're going to see what we can do. And I think we have to wait for them. And I will certainly follow up and I'll keep you apprised, but I just don't know if how soon it will be.
Back to my last comment, if I could. It's Maureen Sidonian, who we're meeting with. She's the SF Regional Executive Director for Habitat for Humanity. And I could invite somebody from Christchurch, and I'm sure they'd appreciate it.
I think that's a great idea.
It could
Yeah.
inspire them, if nothing else.
Yeah, all learning is good learning.
So, and she'll like it. Chris,
Trisha
Trisha.
Christensen, or there may be somebody else. Yeah.
Just completing that thought, I mean, I don't think we need something like final designs or final location, just,
Number of
and
unit.
do all that. Yeah.
Again, it was
No, I
we're
understand.
getting drawings done. We're going to see what we can do. We're excited to learn. And that was it.
Yeah.
So, but I thought it was great that they were getting drawings done.
Yeah, and they have a grant and we've got money to do it. They're way ahead of us.
I will try to follow up and get more information. Okay, anything else for Portola Corridor Town Center? Okay, moving on then to Alpine Los Trancos Skyline.
No, thank you.
Yeah, I have some of the points from the updated slides. Do I need
Oh,
to
great.
share those, or were you gonna share some? Yeah, I have what you said. Oh,
Well-
well, this is the update that you sent, and then we have
Well,
Maybe I can start saying a little bit about, oh, do you want to talk about Hawthorns? Or is there anything new? Because otherwise I think I'll just start on Fogarty.
You can start on Fogarty. We should definitely talk about Hawthorns.
I think it's better if we do Hawthorns first then,
Yep.
because the Fogarty will tie into the Open Space Committee update. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
You wanted me to talk about Hawthorns?
Sure.
So we met with Hawthorns. Let me get my notes.
MROSD,
Sorry, MROSD
the executive
On-
director.
on January 10th, the three of us. And a few people from MROSD. I don't know the relevant-
Okay, the executive director of MROSD, the assistant executive director, and the planner for MROSD.
So one thing we got, I think, was that they see some need for workforce housing. Maybe not the number of units that we've envisioned. So they have across San Mateo County or across Mid Peninsula, I think on the order of 50 units total currently. And so they are looking to potentially increase that a bit. I didn't get the sense that they want to double it. They have, they want to increase it a bit and then kind of understand if they're filling the units or not. The other aspect was the Hawthorns is highly constrained by a conservation easement, which Post is very protective of, as well as their historical designation. And at least as far as they understand, they have to basically retain and restore the current buildings within, the actual footprint of the current building, and that they would be unable to either add new buildings or even like kind of design a very different building on the current footprint of one of their existing buildings. So that makes it quite constrained. They have previously explored putting units into the main house or mansion building. And what they previously explored would be perhaps around 5 or 6 units, which seems viable, but fairly expensive. And then also on the financing side, they also are fairly constrained. They don't have a lot of budget to work with in terms of pursuing a project. So I guess my takeaway from the meeting is 5 to 6 units on this site seems viable, but, would probably be a process to actually figure out if that's the direction they want to go in. I personally didn't really get the sense that we could have a higher target for the site.
I don't think that's wrong. I personally don't think that's wrong. I do think that we should keep at it. Just because things do change and their needs change and the donor statuses change, et cetera. So I think they are responsive to doing what needs to be done. And, they're just letting the buildings fall by neglect is maybe not something that as a town we would encourage. And so anyway, I think it's a possibility that we should just keep the conversation open.
And to that end, I mean, I'm trying to recall, I don't know if we have like a specific next step plan with that question.
No.
In the conversation that you had with them, because that mansion is on what they're calling the historic complex, which is bifurcated from the trail part that they're opening. Did they talk at all about the historic complex? At one point, they were talking about fast tracking the barn. I mean, did any of that come up about timing or anything?
Oh, actually, I think we should give a proviso for this, which is that they cannot, as the staff, cannot give any official opinions about anything that hasn't been approved by the board.
Okay.
So there's a little cautionary tale there. And so I wouldn't want to be anything but factual about what has been approved.
They were interested in what our timeline was
Yep.
and understanding, basically that the situation with Dorothy Ford Park and the RFP being about a year from now. And I guess I would say they didn't, so we basically communicated that we'd want to understand within, say, 6 months or less. And they didn't balk at that.
No.
Okay.
No. I'd say they recognized that we were a player, so to speak,
Okay.
which is a.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I'm getting comments from the public that, this is Terrence, that, asking if the commissioners could speak a little more into their microphones.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I just got a request that we speak directly into the microphone.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you, Terrence. Appreciate it. Okay, so we suggested a 6-month timeline and they didn't balk at it. Okay, that's good to know.
But they also are not,
Yeah.
They can't say anything. They can't say anything.
Are we just, is this
As they
discussion
say,
at
they were in a
all, or-
listening mode.
I'm sorry,
Is
Karen?
this discussion at all or is discussion later?
there's
Oh.
questions now.
You know what? Thank you. Thank you for keeping us on process. Let's go ahead and continue the presentations and then we'll have questions, public comments, and our discussion. Thank you.
Okay, shall we switch to Fogarty now? Okay, actually, could we see the Fogarty page from the agenda? I'm not sure if that, okay, this is actually the 3-slide presentation, right? Okay, either one is fine. So at our last meeting, Betsy Morgan Thaler spoke as chair of Open Space to let us know that Open Space is open to considering ways in which the Open Space Fund could work to help us find an alternative to Dorothy Ford Park. I serve on that committee as well, and I can tell you that when Dorothy Ford Park and Open Space was made a final, an element of the final housing element, we heard from a lot of people who said the Open Space Committee needs to do something about this. And we considered a whole range of different things. Now that Fogarty is in the range of sites that we're considering, we thought it would be useful to have a presentation to the Open Space Committee last week about where things stand, especially because we know now that the owners are thinking about their succession plan fairly in a large way. So then the 3 slides I'll show are basically from the Open Space Committee discussion last week about Fogarty. It's going in the direction of, is there a site at Fogarty that would be suitable for the Open Space Committee to consider as a recommendation for acquisition? And if so, could it also serve the purpose of helping out the town find an alternative to Dorothy Ford Park? So what this first slide shows is on the left, the Fogarty parcels outlined in white on an aerial, the Fogarty parcels that are part of the Winery LLC. And then the image on the right shows sort of in the upper middle where those parcels are on the Mid-Penn map showing Mid-Penn parcels with Razorback Ridge as part of Windy Hill above the Fogarty Winery all along the northwest border. And then across Skyline, Highway 35, showing Coal Creek Open Space Reserve, and also there's Russian Ridge. And both the committee, the Open Space Committee, and the public were really excited to think about the idea that Fogarty might be sort of the missing link between this network of protected areas. Let's see, next slide. This sort of zooms out even farther to say, what is the network really in sort of Mary's grand vision? And that is thinking about the Bay Area Ridge Trail, which is shown here in the local area in red. And again, Fogarty is sort of in the center of this slide. And you can see that it really does sort of fill a gap between the two ends of or two parts of the Bay Area Ridge Trail. So people are really excited strictly from an open space perspective, thinking about how the Open Space Fund could really benefit the town with an acquisition that would have trails that connect to, say, Razorback Ridge and other areas. That's Lost Trail that you see over on in red in the northwest. Razorback Ridge doesn't really show up very well here, but it's closer to the boundary of Fogarty. Taking this one step further now, if you look at the parcel that we've talked about in the past, which is the parcel of Fogarty that is in basically the westernmost or southwestern parcel right along Skyline. Going back one slide, again, going back to that same slide, you can see that there's an open area that's shown as not forested in that parcel. And that's the area, or that's part of the area which we looked at before in this committee and found that that area satisfies the housing element filters that were applied in terms of steepness, soil stability, flood, evacuation, that sort of stuff. Okay, next slide. I got interested in what that area looks like because we really haven't seen this property, and we know that it, on paper it satisfies the criteria, but there's a really big difference between what something looks like on a map and what it really looks like on the ground. But I did find a 1941 aerial image of the property from the UCSB Public Repository of Aerial Photographs, and compared that with one from 2016. And you can see that that area really was open. It has had some dirt roads in it. We still haven't seen it, and we're hoping to see it really soon. But this is the area that we think would be most promising probably for housing. So this is all still in the realm of hope. But the Open Space Committee really is open to considering an acquisition, part of which could be parceled off and zoned for high density housing. And the reason for that is that, when Dorothy Ford Park and open space was secured by the town and acquired, it was secured in a way that didn't anticipate that the town would ever want to carve out a piece and zone it for high density. At the same time, when the Open Space Fund was approved and reapproved many times, no one ever envisioned that a previously approved open space would be lost as open space and would be used for housing. And so what we have hoped to do is to try and solve those two things, bring those two threads together and see if we can use the Open Space Fund for both purposes. If Betsy's here, she'll give a little bit more background on that later and some of the ideas that we've talked about. But that's basically where it stands now. And Mary and I have talked recently with Pat Fogarty, And Mary, do you want to take it from here?
Well, there are two things that yes, I mean, we have an appointment on Thursday to walk the property. Uh, The, uh, I would like to say that in no way is this a negotiation. This is purely just exchanging views. Nothing like a negotiation can be done in the public forum. I would add, which has added to my enthusiasm, that there are partners out there. And maybe this gets back to Ronnie's question. MRSD was quite clear that one of their one of their main goals is the completion of the Bay Ridge Trail through, and those, they would be a supportive partner on the construction of that trail. So, right, that's, I guess, and the only other partner that's what I've got on that, I think.
You guys want to update on the Williamson?
Yeah.
The word is that none of it is in the Williamson Act. We have been told, we have been informed that none of the property is in the Williamson Act. None of the Fogarty properties.
And so I think that means that our understanding is housing could be for general workforce, not needing to target agricultural workers, and not being in the Williamson Act probably
Makes it
the
easier,
problem.
except for the zoning. We'd still have to go through a zoning process, whereas with the Williamson Act, it's automatic.
Right. Yeah. Same zoning process we went through with other sites, or well, every site's different.
Right.
Yeah. And I want to echo what Mary said, that this is all just getting to know each other, finding out what people's interests are, what the family's needs are, that sort of thing. So very hard to say where this might end up.
And I also am very sensitive to not pressuring them too much.
But people were really excited.
Yeah,
about
but it's hard
this.
it's so hard to contain our
Yeah.
excitement, but we're doing the best we can.
Did you discuss this with MidPan as an MROSD, Anna Ruiz?
Yeah, that's what I said. They're interested in partnering,
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
but not in the housing as of yet. I mean, and that has nothing to do with a decision or anything, because the staff can't make a decision without the vote from the board. So we don't have anything except that we talked.
Yes, it's all preliminary discussions right now.
Yeah.
Yes. This is very interesting, very intriguing. Are there other updates on properties that you've explored?
Can I ask a
Oh.
question on Fogarty?
Well, are we going to wait for questions?
It's a question.
Oh, no, we're waiting for a question until,
Until she's done
Oh, I
with the
thought we were waiting
presentation.
for
No.
Yeah,
discussion.
Yeah.
yeah,
Karen.
so there is a property off of Alpine, which I looked into, was 6 acres, that is not appropriate because of seismology. And it's not developable. So for the sake of future renditions of this work, it should be really passed down that we don't need to keep messing with that one.
Was that a site in our list or a new site?
That's the list you used.
The list from you and Judith from the Sunrise?
No, it was new.
Was new. Okay.
So what else did I
Uh,
do? I feel like I've been working like a dog. I can't remember. What else?
We should update on 3350. You have an updated map at least. Do you want the slide?
I think the slide that's in the proposal packet is a slide that I showed at our last meeting. So I don't think there's new information per se, but I guess one thought was someone mentioned to me or asked me whether the idea would be to keep the existing house on that property if the affordable housing, the high density housing was added, because they don't really overlap. So I guess in principle, one could. I hadn't thought of that. But I guess if you were doing maybe 40 units, or maybe you laying it out in a slightly different way, that's conceivable. I don't have any sort of conclusive thoughts on that.
Not in that, not in that picture. If you did this.
Yeah, well, that's down to bare earth there. So I guess.
Alright.
But that's where the house is, right? So it doesn't overlap with the
Well,
housing.
I just mean if there were 50 units on the site, that would not be keeping with the.
Well, it's above it.
The
house
house
is
is above it's in the upper left, that flat area, that area right there is where the house is currently. Whether or not that would be someplace, a separate parcel or something. I wasn't really thinking in that direction, but maybe someone would.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it also shows that there's all that space to put housing if we wanted to put there
Yeah.
instead of closer to the road.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the other idea that came up was, well, could you put a conservation easement on the back half of the property? And in doing so, have a trail that would connect to the Westridge Trail? And would that make it more consistent with Westridge? Probably not.
Okay.
The comment, at least that we wrote down, owner supportive of 25 units or more. I thought that was after the last meeting. Are you saying that was, we talked about that in the last meeting?
I think Martin Miller spoke at the last meeting and said that he's not wild about 50 units. I thought he had agreed to it when we met with him, but he didn't rule it out.
Yes, and what I recall is he said, oh, I didn't know about Fogarty at the time. So, as new things come up,
Yeah.
opinions can change. So, but he was open to it and thought it would be a better spot than building it forward. Okay, anything else from the Alpine Los Trancos group?
We have our list.
Seems
In-
like we have so many things on that one.
So,
No, I think that's it.
okay, so speaking of the list, first of all, Karen, thank you very much for keeping the master. I think we need to make sure we're coordinated because we've been adding new properties to our subcommittee lists. And I'm not sure they're making it onto the master list. And if we're putting site identifiers on it, we need to make sure they're all married. So if each subcommittee can get in touch with Karen, not that you have to give her the name of the property, but at least, some of the indicators and what ones are new, so we can have that master list be as updated as possible. That makes sense?
Yeah, I'm working with Jocelyn and Nona. Okay,
And who?
Nona.
No.
Okay. And so, question then, are there more than 31 to your knowledge?
I take the information they give me and put it on the list. So that's my knowledge.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right, well then, thank you, everybody. And now let's open it up for committee questions and then we'll do public comments.
I had one question on Fogarty in that, so all of the parcels are not in the Williamson Act,
That's correct.
just to clarify. And we picked one parcel in particular because it's more viable for housing, but are they totally thinking about the future and what they're going to do with all of them? Just
I
The
would
part-
say that's not the purvey of this committee, what the Fogartys are doing with all their parcels.
No, I mean, that none of the other ones are viable or, yeah, that's where I was kind of going, just curious. If you're talking,
Shall I try? You go.
The reason that we focused on that parcel is that it looked to me like it was the only one that passed through all the selection filters and has frontage on Skyline. There are other parcels that have somewhat more level area, but they're in vineyards, so, or they have, the event areas and things like that.
To that question about the filters, the wildfire risk was assessed in those filters, correct?
It was, and it passed through the filter, but I don't know that that was a rigorous filter or the filter that would be applied now. So I didn't actually include
Okay.
that. Although it did pass through the filter that was used.
Okay, so it passed
Initially.
through the previous housing element
so I have-
filter. Yeah, thank
I
you.
have a slide somewhere of that, but I'll maybe.
If you want to, yeah. Okay. Karen, did you have any other questions? Jocelyn?
I had a question. I just wanted to understand this organization, the open space one that you mentioned. So they have a big pot of money that they can buy land with? And is that like public knowledge of how much is in there?
Public
and all that?
knowledge, the open space fund is about 8 million right now.
Okay.
And, normally that's intended to be used based on the vote of
Mhm.
the townspeople, that it would be used for acquisition and bringing properties up to a certain standard after they were acquired. So not for maintenance and
Mhm.
not for other things. But in this instance, I think people felt like there's such a great potential for open space that you could sort of have a win-win of getting an open space and using a small part of it for housing. And at the same time, you would be using it to resecure Dorothy Ford Park.
Can I try and illuminate that a little bit more? The town's open space fund could and can be used much like Peninsula Open Space Trust Fund, in that we could potentially buy land and then sell part or buy and use that part for a different thing, depending on how the deal is structured.
And do we know how much that is in that bucket? Is that public as well? Oh, that's the same one.
much.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Thanks.
So that's our.
Okay. Carter, do you have any questions?
I do not.
Okay. Anybody else? I have a few questions, but, okay. And this may be a question more for Terrence. If we were to look at the Fogarty property, could we consider mixed use instead of residential, looking at 20 to 23 units an acre? And my thought is, if it were mixed use, we could get the housing, but we also might be able to have some retail up there, a store or some services like that. And I'm just wondering, as we're looking at that, as well as if we had the 20 to 23 units an acre and there was bonus density applied, could a developer actually have some above market rate units, because those usually help subsidize the affordable units? And I just want to know the feasibility of that. Terrence, is that something you could speak to?
Sure. Those are very. I'm sorry. Am I unmuted? No, that's good. Those are reasonable possibility, and the particularly having a store is helpful because affordable housing projects get a walk score based on how easy it is to access services, And this site without some sort of a mixed use with some sort of store wouldn't score very well on that. So it wouldn't be very competitive for state or federal funds. That doesn't mean we can't do it. I'm just saying that if you incorporated a store, it'd be particularly good. And having a mixture of market rate with affordable units is very possible. And as you said, it would aid the financial feasibility of the project. But we still need to meet the state housing requirements, we do need to come up with somewhere, not just on one side, but we need to come up with those 50 units of low income housing.
Right. And I guess my question was, with the bonus density, you could have, I'm going to throw this out, you could have, say, 75 units, 50 of which meet the affordability requirement and 25 that are, market rate or higher. Does that?
Yes, absolutely. You could do something like that.
Okay. Let's see.
Can I ask?
Just to clarify one thing, to meet the state's requirements to recertify the housing element, we only need to identify the site and zone it for the proper uses. Those other factors, like doing a mixed use, is an extra positive that we can employ to make it actually happen. But all we have to do to meet the state's requirements is to find a site that we can zone to accommodate 50 units.
Okay, but we could recommend that we want to look at mixed use versus just purely residential.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And the other question is, if we did something like that and looking at the Fogarty property, is there going to be any impact to the EIR? I know we talked about that a little bit in the beginning. I just wanted to know what the ramifications of that might be.
I'd have to look at the property, and we'd have to we'd have to do some sort of studies to see if we had any endangered species or other issues that we had to address. So yes, there would be some environmental work that needed to be done.
Sorry, Terrence, you're speaking there about an EIR, I guess, for the site itself, but the EIR, I mean, the CEQA analysis for the overall housing element. I think that's the question, like if that would.
No,
need
that's
to be
that's what I meant.
recirculated.
I'm sorry,
is what
sorry
you
to
meant?
interrupt. Yes, that's what I meant. That it wouldn't. It would be an amended or a focused environmental document. Actually, the housing element was actually approved on a negative declaration, but it could be a focused document or a. So I'd have to look at the particular thing, but there would be some environmental document changes that would be necessary for almost any site that we're looking at.
Okay, thank
But
you.
it wouldn't have the overall issues like traffic generation that are regional. Those kinds of questions, doesn't matter where you put them in Portola Valley, it works. But there are some site specific issues that we'd have to do environmental analysis of.
Well, sorry, I mean, the traffic generation, I think the site would be a change because it's on a completely different access road.
Yes, but it wouldn't affect our regional traffic.
It would, right?
Well, probably not. For example, the VMT, the vehicle miles traveled that are generated by the housing probably wouldn't change very much. We'd have to look at it, but it still would it would still have the same trip characteristics roughly, because Portola Valley is just not that large a community. Although this is the far end of it, I know.
Okay.
So I have a question
Yeah.
of Terrence as well. So the environmental document, that would be required for Dorothy Ford Park and open space as well if you carve out a parcel. Is that right?
No, not just to zone it, because the housing element envisioned zoning the property that way.
Maybe there's some confusion, like there's an overall CEQA analysis for the housing element as a program, but then as any individual site is developed, it will have its own CEQA analysis. So eventually, if Dorothy Ford Park goes through development, at that time, there would be a analysis, and feel free to correct that.
Yes, that's correct. No, but the zoning
Okay,
itself that we're in
thank
the
you.
process of doing does not require a change in the environmental document. Just the zoning, because that's a high level. But when the individual development brought forward, there'd be further environmental review.
But HCD does require that it be rezoned as well.
Correct. But the rezoning is covered under the existing environmental document of Dorothy Ford Park. Other places that weren't envisioned in the housing element would require an amendment to that document. It's not necessarily an onerous process, but it is a process.
Okay. Any other questions related to the presentations and updates?
Yeah, I guess now that we have parents answering questions, you had brought up, and I put on the slide, Christchurch, you were thinking may not require rezoning. And I'm not sure about that. I think it actually probably would, but maybe parents could comment on that.
Yeah, Terrence, can you speak to that? And I guess there's, with SB4, does a church require rezoning, and maybe with the housing element, how does that impact it? Is that your question, Ronnie?
Yeah, the question is that, and I'm not an expert on SB4, but SB4 does allow for faith-based organizations to do housing on their sites without having to rezone the property. That they can do it consistent with their existing zoning.
But if we wanted, so like for Ladera Church, for example, since we put them in our housing element as very low income, my understanding is we are required to rezone the parcel required by HCD. And I think that would be the same here, correct?
It's possible. It's possible.
Why would that be? Is it a separate parcel?
Because the state doesn't care about our local issues, so they have these overarching rules. So it's possible we could convince them that SB4 allowed it, but in the case of Ladera, they wanted it rezoned, so they probably would want it here too. Again, that's not an onerous process. You could rezone the section of the process the property that you were looking for.
I think SB4 has some trade-offs as well. If I understand it, impacts maybe like using union workers or something like along those lines for the construction that might increase costs. So I mean, that may not be exactly right, but I think there's some trade-offs in applying it. Complexity.
I'm sorry. I agree. I wasn't sure if that was a question, so I'll just agree.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and well, we can get to it in the discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? All right, I'd like to open it up for public comment on all of the discussion presentations that we've had and updates.
Christy C., you're allowed to speak.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to point out that the Hawthorne's board meeting is tomorrow night, the 22nd at 7 p.m., which unfortunately conflicts with some of our meetings. But 7 p.m. And since you mentioned that there's a possible 5 units on the historical complex, number 9 in the agenda for Hawthorne's board meeting is to pursue a partnership for rehabilitating and programming for Hawthorne's historic complex Lower Barn, and bring the terms and conditions of the partnership agreement to the board of directors at a later meeting for consideration of approval. So that might be an interesting discussion that this group should listen to. And I think some of you may know that proposal is coming from a member of Portola Valley.
Okay, thank you, Christy. Anybody else?
Yes,
Betsy M.
thank you. Betsy Morgan Thaler on Portola Road. I have a question vis-a-vis the recent discussion on the EIR potential for Dorothy Ford. But before I ask that question, I just wanted to ask you, Karen, as chair, whether it might make sense as the question period concludes and before your committee goes into discussion, would it make sense for me to, it's about a 3-minute open space committee report. Much of it would be, some of it is redundant with what you've just heard from Nona, but it doesn't make much sense for me to contribute after you've had your discussion. So I just want to ask whether I could be granted the privilege of jumping the item B to prior to your discussion. But meanwhile, let me ask this question because I heard Terrence and Ronnie talking about the environmental impact issues around Dorothy Ford. And I had seen on our website under the housing area, and in response to the town's anticipated response to HCD's October 16th letter, I'm now reading from the website that the zoning regulations, this being Dorothy Ford, be changed to make development at Dorothy Ford Housing Element Site by right. This would mean that development of the 2.48 acre portion of the site with 50 very low income housing unit site could be accomplished without any further land use entitlement. I interpreted that, and this is my question, perhaps incorrectly, to include EIR and CEQA. I'm guessing I'm in error given what I just heard.
What was the word you used? To include or preclude? I didn't catch it.
Are you talking
What, Betsy,
What's going on?
okay,
on the town's website? If you go to the house, you go to building and housing, and then you drop down to housing. I did this a few days ago in anticipation of our open space meeting, so I'm not there right now. But you can see the town's response. The town's anticipating responding to 2 items that HCD required us to respond to in their October 16th letter. And the statement, and I'll read the statement again because I've read it a few times. I think it's worth doing so. That this is what HCD is asking, that zoning regulations be changed to make development at Dorothy Ford Housing Element Site by right. This would mean that development of the 2.48 acre portion of the site with 50 very low income housing units, it says site could be accomplished without further land use entitlement. Anyway, I would, if we can't unpack that now, it's a question that's been looming in my mind for a while about the implications of responding to the letter and locking in the by right, because it has ramifications for our flexibility vis-a-vis the Open Space Fund. And that's why I wanted to elaborate on Nona's excellent presentation about how this committee can incorporate their thinking about the Open Space Fund. And I'll stop talking.
Okay, Terrence, would you like to address that? I know that there was a letter that went back to HCD, but I can't find it on our site.
Is it later in the agenda?
No,
Okay.
no.
I'm happy to address it now.
Okay, thank you.
The state requires that it be by right, but again, and I pointed out in that letter, the city, the town owns that property, so no force can compel the town to sell the property to a developer, even though the land use entitlement might be is required to be cleared away, the town does not have to have to sell the property. The town is completely within the town's control as to when and if they ever sold that property. It really has no material effect on whether or not the project can go forward. It still requires town approval. Now, whether or not even a project that's permitted by right, still, if it has significant environmental impacts, still has to address them in a disclosure document as a particular development was brought forward. Although that gets very thorny, and in discussing that in more detail, I'd want to bring the town attorney in. But I can tell you that yes, the state requires that we make development by right, but it's immaterial to the town's control over its own property.
Thank you.
Thank you, Terrence. Okay, do we have any other questions from the public, Emily? Or comments?
Phone number ending in 3056. You're allowed to speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Dana. Okay, just a couple, I've got 4 points here. Because of the fires in Los Angeles, the filters that are going to change for how we realize that we can use land. So that's number one. 3350 Alpine Road isn't it not a flood zone in the back? So someone needs to check that. Did anyone check the Valley Oak property that I suggested? And that's just number 3. You don't need to answer that right now.
What property was that, Dana?
It's on Valley Oak. And I think,
That
no,
has been
Is that
evaluated.
then you would mention the Nell property? Is that what you're talking about?
We're not using a name.
yes, but I didn't think we wanted to go that far in discussions. So I'm just saying the Grove, that property, I wondered if you guys had checked out. And my third point is regarding the Episcopal Church and everything else. You know that the church in Ladera built a shoebox with a whatever the thing is called on the top, the lights, and is renting it for $3,200 a month for 600 square feet. At what point do we talk about affordable housing? And if that's where we're going, that's not affordable. If my mortgage had ever gotten to $3,200 on my house, I wouldn't be here. So I want to make sure that as you guys move forward, you say to people, gee, what is affordable housing mean to you in terms of how much it costs? So $3,200 for a shoebox with a skylight in it is not affordable for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana.
So I can answer one of the questions that should I do?
Yeah,
that?
sure.
Okay. So the property that you asked us to look at, we did, and it has 2 vaults that come together in the middle of the property, basically dividing it into 3 chunks. It's sort of a Y-shaped arrangement of vaults, such that if you were going 150 feet from all faults, there's not much left.
This property, for the record, is 2 Valley Oak.
Not for the record.
And, oh. Any other questions or any other comments or questions from the public?
Rebecca Flynn, you're allowed to speak.
Hi, I had another question for Terrence related to Betsy's question. Terrence, you had sent a letter back to HCD saying that the town would comply to the letter of their request. But you also noted that in order to comply with that Dorothy Ford housing element site that the town would actually have to go through a whole zoning process. And I'm wondering if that is what's holding up HCD, if they're actually sitting there waiting for us to complete that, or if you've had any conversation with HCD to kind of, if they're going to recertify us in the absence of an actual zoning, or if that is going to be required.
And Terrence, this was actually a question I had for later on, so if you could address it, that would be great. Thank you.
That's fantastic, and I'm happy to address it again if you want to as well. It won't be the last time. So the HCD requires that we make those two changes before they will recertify our housing element. So, and they will not do it without us doing that. So they're requiring that we make the minor change in the zoning ordinance and change the zoning of the Dorothy Ford housing parcel to high density residential. So they're requiring those things before they'll consider recertifying our element. We're in the process of getting a consultant, a surveyor on board so that we can create a parcel and then present to the planning commission and the town council that rezoning. Once that rezoning is done, it will be sent to the state, and they will supposedly recertify our element. I am concerned that they'll come up with yet another thing that we have to do, but we're going to try to meet the requirements so we can remove the danger of a builder's remedy project coming into our town.
And follow up on that, is there a timing? Is there a time set for getting the surveyor on board and getting the work done?
No, we're still in the process of trying to find someone. So I don't have a straight time. Basically, we want to do it as soon as we can, and until we do, we're an uncertified housing element. Well, even after we do it, last time the state chewed on our documents for months. So it should be straightforward, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Terrence.
No problem.
Any other questions from the public or comments? Okay.
We
Do-
have one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Betsy M.
Yes, just to reiterate my preamble, which was yes, you remember. Okay, I'll lower my hand, whatever your answer is. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so would we like to just keep the meeting moving? Or do we want a bio break? Are we good keeping it moving? Right. Okay, so I think that Betsy's suggestion to speak now, which is item 5B, prior to us having our discussion is a good idea. And I would like to give her the floor for that.
Am I muted?
You are unmuted.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Karen and committee. I really just wanted to step back a moment. I appreciated Jocelyn's question, and so I just want to little bit look at the framework of our thinking and our purpose. First, to start, that the Open Space Committee is advisory to the Town Council. We are not deciders, but we oversee the Open Space Fund, which right now is, as I understand it, closer to $9 million. And it is a legally restricted fund by virtue of the 5 ballot measures that directed the 2% user utility fund in that specific direction, stipulating that the funds were to be directed towards open space purposes. As a committee, over the decades that it has existed, it has been dedicated to acquisition. Around 8 years ago, conservation easements, hit the table and they began to be discussed, and they are very much a part of our thinking now. One-time capital expenses to bring our parcels when acquired up to a standard, and maintenance expenses agreed upon by a particular subcommittee, a subcommittee of 2 members from open space, 2 members from conservation. So that encompasses all the spending possibilities of the open space fund. Moving on to your interests, all of the community is pretty aware now that the financial burden of creating 100% affordable housing, particularly 100% extremely low income housing, is a real challenge. And yet you've identified one property that would serve both an open space purpose and a very affordable housing purpose. And it really generated interest on all of our parts individually. And as we collectively got together last Thursday at the open space meeting, there was genuine excitement amongst the committee members. And it's been a hard year for the entire town, for us as well. So it was so wonderful to really see the engagement and the excitement. It was just a pleasure. We were particularly intrigued by it because of the potential alliance, the win-win that we saw, because there's been a very recent history in this town of a split between open space and housing, and either or, and the possibility that we could bring them back together was heartening. The prospect too of looking at this in terms of farm worker housing and even the evident unmet need of migrant farm worker housing truly engaged and kicked off our thinking, though we didn't limit the conversation to those purposes, but there was a lot of engagement around them. So was there around the prospects for the town to partner with other open space nonprofits, as Mary nodded to earlier. So I just want to say that we are there, and in terms of the advisory nature of our committee would be very supportive of pursuing this further, the Fogarty piece further. The next point that I wanted to make was just particularly about Dorothy Ford, and Nona mentioned it, that if we were able to preserve Dorothy Ford as open space, and the council were willing to do so, and they were willing to commit to preserving Dorothy Ford as open space durably so, we would very much support that too. This would not necessarily be an either or, it could be a both and. So the prospects for liberating the open space fund, for finding useful purposes for it, has not been as alive as it is right now, certainly in my tenure in the town, and I'll bet in many of yours too. So that, by means of that, I will hand it back to you. Thank you for allowing me to jump ahead in your agenda.
Thank you, Betsy. Okay, so let's have a discussion about the properties that we've talked about. And I think this ties going into the proposal as well. But does anybody want to start? Does anyone have any thoughts? Okay. All right, I have some comments. I am actually very intrigued and excited by this Fogarty idea. And I looked at a map because there have been some concerns that it's far away. And I just wanted to share, you can go from Page Mill and it's about 25 minutes to Portola Valley, and it's about 30 minutes down 84. So there's two ways to get here. I talked with an employer in Portola Valley who is very supportive of housing and is actually looking at maybe building a unit on his property. But I mean, obviously that doesn't get us to the 50 we need. But his employees right now live in Modesto, Morgan Hill, Placerville, amazingly, he said, Santa Cruz Mountains, Ben Lomond, and San Francisco. So I know it's far away, but when you think about, and I know some people that work at Alpine Hills that are coming from Tracy and down in South San Jose, it's a hell of a commute, and that this is to me, it's a better alternative than those commutes might be. I also talked to somebody who works locally, and she said she would love to live up there because of the beauty of being up there. Now, she already lives up Old La Honda, so, but I wanted to share some anecdotal thoughts. And a gentleman in the open space meeting actually talked about when he was a student at Stanford, he lived up the hill because it was less expensive, and he thought that there could be interest from that community as well. And that really heartened me. So I did want to share that just in terms of what I was listening to. And let's see. So yeah, that's just one of the things that I wanted to throw out there in my mind, my opinion.
I have a couple of things. First of all, I really appreciate that comment. I also lived on Skyline as an undergraduate at Stanford, and it was wonderful. That whole community really needs low-income housing because there are a lot of businesses. There are some businesses up there that have to get people from all over as well. So we're looking at a place where it has been very difficult to build anything. I also wanted to point out that this committee, our committee, has been working off of the basis of all of the work that has been done over the last, with the previous ad hoc housing, with the other housing element committees, et cetera. It's built on those things, and as a result, we're able to find something that was unique. It's because of their work that we've been able to winnow it down in this way. So we are very grateful, or I'm very grateful for the work that was done before on the affordable housing. It really, of course, it's very near and dear to my heart for many reasons. I think this is an ideal place for firefighters, for the fire department is right there. There's a lot of our resources that need our workforce support are on Skyline. So it's been our neglect as a town that we have neglected that part of our town. And it's a wonderful opportunity we have to enrich that area. Obviously, I'm enthusiastic, but I'm trying hard not to be too enthusiastic for any number of reasons. And I just appreciate the way the community has evaluated this and come forward. Thank you.
Any other committee comments, thoughts, questions? Oh, you know what? I did have. No, okay. I don't really have a question on that. Okay, let's move on then to item 5C, which is the review, revisions, and initial vote of the proposal. And Ronnie, did you want to go over the changes that you made? And thank you for making the changes and keeping us updated and the public. I think it's really important that as things change, that we're there letting folks know what's happened. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so, I haven't made too many updates, but, tried to make a few based on our discussion in the last meeting and some updates to the sites that, Nona provided some, let me just go through. So overview is the same, status is the same. These sites are the same. So 3350 Alpine, the picture is updated with what Nona provided and some of the notes, which I guess is what we talked about mostly in our last meeting. The Fogarty property, Nona provided this update, which, you know, we already went through it earlier in this meeting. Blue Oaks is not updated. Christchurch, I think I just added this bullet point about SB4 may avoid need to rezone TBD based on Karen's request. On Center Substation hasn't been updated. Soccer field is the same. The Hawthorns I updated after our meeting, and we also talked about this earlier. So it says 5 units here now. Dorothy Ford Park, I updated this picture and some of the bullets, or maybe Nona provided this update, but it's incorporating the information that she presented in our last meeting about the creek setback, et cetera. Evaluation criteria, I've not updated. Karen, did you make
I
an update
did
here?
update it.
Okay.
I got information from both Nona and Karen Askey. Thank you. And I included those. There's 2 areas there, community benefits that Nona provided, which I can't read from where I am. I don't have my.
Local worker.
Yeah, local work, community benefits, local worker living locally, and economic diversification.
And then Karen Askey provided a set of very good HCD criteria at the very end.
Which refers to the memo that I shared with you on the research I had done.
Okay. The voting process is the same. On the recommendations, so I changed the wording on these top 3 just to be the same as the others. So now it's just recommend 1 site, 2 to 3 sites, or 5 sites. And then I did take out the question about whether or not 10 sites are viable for affordable housing development, because I think, yeah, that is kind of encapsulated in the other questions. And then, for Hawthorne's historic complex is now, I have it as 5 units. I think there was a 50 units that I removed. If I remember right. No, was it? Oops. This is the snapshot.
And then you added a
I'm
oh,
sorry.
sorry.
Sorry, what?
And you added the comments page, but we're
Yeah.
not there yet.
And then, well, here we are. Yeah, I added, so for example, Jocelyn in our last meeting wanted to clarify this thing about her votes being based on the understanding of looking for a 50-unit site. Karen Vatra had also reached out and was maybe wondering about how to record comments. And this was my idea, that we could have basically this slide and everyone could sort of provide whatever comments they want on like specific sites or the overall process, what their, what's behind their votes. And we would record that here and provide it as part of the report. Yeah. Questions for town council, I think I haven't updated. I was wondering, I mean, we have some, like this question, would you like ad hoc site evaluation committee to attempt to find new sites. I mean, I think we're kind of doing as much as we can already, so I don't know if that's still a pertinent question.
You know, I took it to mean after we meet with council, will they say, you're done, or we want you to keep looking? That's the way I read it,
Yeah.
but
Right, but if they say find new sites, do we have more we can find? Maybe. Anyway, so yeah, this can be discussion. Yeah.
okay. Oh, well, should we take questions on this? Does anyone have any questions on this proposal at this point in time? I had one on the questions for town council, and it was just, we have number 5 says, should we be exploring finance options for VLI development, specifically versus the 40/50? And I'm wondering if we should be asking the question, because my understanding is that we're not supposed to be doing that. Should we be exploring any financing options? I just didn't understand why we,
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Unless it's a question like specifically for me that I can answer, maybe we should just do it during discussion and then everyone
Okay.
might have input on
Okay.
something like that.
Good point. Thank you. Okay. Okay. All right. So any questions from the committee? All right. Are there any comments from the public?
Oh, we do have one hand raised. Ms. Stacy, you're allowed to speak.
Thank you. I have a question regarding the pre-voting process, not the final vote, but midway through. Is this a normal process to gauge where some people stand, which between meetings could have some discussion with one or another? And is the midway gauge vote necessary is my question? Or is the end vote more, well, is the end vote, do we need a midway gauge vote? And the purpose of that is what? To gauge where everybody stands. I'm just curious if you could talk about that, because I noticed it with MROSD and I thought, wow, they're going to do a midway vote. And wow, now everyone knows how everybody's thinking. But in the last time, 3 didn't vote, 3 did vote. So it got a little confusing for those of us watching for purpose wise, and didn't seem like everyone was ready. So if you could discuss that, thanks.
Okay, Karen, would you like to address that at all? Because does come from the mid-pen process.
I think a earlier vote is valuable because then we can gauge if there's anything else that we can address. So if there's something that comes up that somebody else doesn't agree upon, then you can discuss it at a later point, and why not? I think we're far enough along that that a vote is useful.
Yeah, and the only other thing I would say to the question is, last time I don't think that people came to the meeting prepared that they were going to vote. And so that was why that ended up that way. And hindsight's 20/20. Let's just put it that way. Does anyone else want to comment on
Sometimes.
that? Yeah, let's hope. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's useful to trigger a discussion. I don't think there's any need that it's like a blind vote. And like often in, say, town council meetings, there'll be discussion about the way that people are going to vote before the actual vote happens, because you try to make adjustments and get the consensus, et cetera. And I think it's good if we discuss things and try to convince each other to vote, in one direction or the other.
Yeah, and diversity of opinion is absolutely fine. We will end up going to council with our evaluation of the sites that we found that are appropriate to even bring to council. And we will have the ability to comment. And so if we agree or disagree with something, we can share that as well. So I think that's what we're looking at here. But it will be when we are not the decision makers. The council would decide on how they want to move forward with all of the data and analysis that we found. Okay. All right. Any other public comments?
Phone number ending in 7562, you're allowed to speak.
Hi, good evening, Caroline Bertongen. I just wanted to congratulate you guys. It seems like you're making progress, and the way you guys are organizing these meetings is fantastic. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great, because my phone just cut me off, so great. I wish this team was the first team we dealt with many years ago when we first had our first ad hoc meetings, and it's so inspiring. It's a positive attitude, and I'm learning every time I listen to you guys. So thank you so much for all the input and all the collaborative efforts from each member. It's really inspiring. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. Do we have any other comments?
Yes, you have. This is Betsy Morgenthaler. My comment question regards recommendation number 14, Dorothy Ford for 50 units. Following Nona's presentation at your last meeting, I believe it was, that showed that in spite of our HCD housing element that suggests we have 2.48 acres of developable land, we actually have 1.1 acre of developable land due to the important setbacks there. Due to that, if you drive down to the Menlo Park to the base of Middle and look across the street, you can start to get an idea of what 50 units on 1.1 acres might look like. I wondered, therefore, whether you would entertain, as you have done, say, with Alpine Road. You've sliced and diced it several different ways, the 3350 Alpine Road, that is. Is there an opportunity to either create line item 15 and recommend it for fewer than 50 units, and at least consider some offloading? Otherwise, the density factor there is going to be very much different than it appeared to the public in the schematics. Thank you for considering that, and I sign off.
Thank you, Betsy.
That's all for public comment.
Okay, thank you, Emily. All right, well, let's move on then to committee discussion and the vote. So I think Carter's ready.
I've got some comments, and some concerns. I'm quite concerned about identifying specific properties for specific zoning. My education in architecture and urban planning, would indicate that similar, properties of similar characteristics should be zoned similarly. And the ask that we're having, about identifying individual properties, is of, urban planning concern to me. So for that reason, I'm concerned that there aren't multiple properties, being considered, for rezoning along Skyline Boulevard, that all have similar characteristics. For the same reason, the properties adjacent, to 3350 Alpine Road. There are 4 properties that are all similarly situated, with similar topography, similar setbacks, and similar geology, similar access, to sewer, water, sewer, and power. So I'm wondering if, and I'm just talking out loud right now, there are, almost 11 acres, in those 4 properties. If we took the 50 units that, were planned for across the street, and divided them, into 6 units, per acre, along, that zone, we'd end up with, 60 or 70 units. If that wouldn't, provide an opportunity, to meet the HCD, requirement, without glomming them all onto one property, making the density more similar to the opt-in zoning, that, has been, is currently part of, the, housing element. I think it would be more acceptable, to an owner, like, Dr. Miller, because I don't think that he really was planning on, 50 units per acre on his, 3-acre parcel. And it would, be in compliance, with, the RENA requirements. It also give the opportunity, for those, property owners to have flexibility, to opt in or not. And it would meet all of the, the requirements, for the 50 units, that are necessary, to obviate the need for development, on the Dorothy Ford parcel.
And so when I think of 6 units an acre, I have trouble getting to the very low income category. So when you were saying that, you are thinking this would all be very low income units across those 4 properties along Alpine.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just talking out loud right
No,
now.
it's great. I actually, all ideas are good ideas. I just,
I mean, I'm just looking for a way, to actually, because if we identified, 3350 for something, to me, that would be a real violation, of regular zoning practices to identify one property amongst, 4 essentially identical, identically characterized properties, and zoning it for something else. If an applicant, came to the town and asked for that, it would be denied. And I think it's weird, that we're even considering it. It's similar to, the one property, along Skyline Boulevard. Every property on the other side of the road, is owned by, the National Audubon Society. And they're similarly zoned. They're not in Portola Valley, but, all of the Jellic property, all of the Fogarty properties, and the one unfogarty owned property, to the south is all similarly characterized. If we were thinking about planning, from a planner's standpoint, all of those properties should be similarly zoned. And as a consequence, you wouldn't necessarily have to zone them for 50 units an acre in order to get to that number.
So something very similar to that was at kind of the beginning of the ad hoc housing element committee process. The consultant that was asked to find, suitable sites for housing came back with a map that had, well, an area around Mount Horse Triangle, but then also that strip along Alpine Road, pretty much what you're talking about. And there was at least, yeah, there's a fair amount of pushback from, well, Westridge neighborhood in general, but at least one of the property owners there sent a letter that, you know, they had just bought their house, they were planning to live there forever, they didn't want to be rezoned. So, yeah, you would have to kind of deal with the fact that at least some of the properties along that strip would not be supportive of that and
Well,
don't have plans to build
and
housing.
Ronnie, I think that's the basic problem. You know, is that you have to identify areas where, you know, people want development. You know, and the majority of the people of Portola Valley moved here, you know, to avoid development. You know, I mean, they knew that once in a while there'd be a neighbor that, you know, reconstructed their house or built a, you know, a barn or a guest house. But all of this seems just counterintuitive, you know, and I mean, it's frustrating, you know, for all of us. You know, I do think, you know, the Fogarty site, you know, provides, you know, great opportunity. It feels a bit like, you know, shifting it out of town, you know, because there isn't an internal connection to get there. But and I've got a level of frustration that, you know, that I'm sure we're all feeling on the inside. Because I'm not sure that Dorothy Ford Park would ever really be developed. Even if you did the rezone, you know, and did the mapping. You know, so, you know, because right now, the problem is I've, you know, tried to solicit, you know, property owners, you know, interest, you know, is because of, you know, the HCD mandates, they essentially take away our opportunity, you know, to get people interested in rezoning their properties. You know, because planning is a long-term ownership strategy, but most of these owners have, you know, short and midterm, you know, desires to maintain their current lifestyle, and that it's not, you know, at the end of their life or at the end of their estate planning, you know, and the HCD mandate, you know, for minimum, you know, minimums essentially kills any opportunity we have as a town to get broader strokes, you know, of the town rezone, you know, in a normal, you know, planning strategy. If you go anywhere else, you know, kind of in the world, except for the HCD world, you know, when a property is zoned multifamily, it's usually in neighborhoods, you know, that have existing single family homes or farms or, you know, small businesses or, you know, something. And in the meantime, you know, people are able to maintain and improve their properties and continue their lifestyle, you know, without the, you know, the impending threat that if they do anything, you know, they hit a minimum, you know, of 20 units. You know, nobody in his right mind, you know, who's got a single family property, you know, is going to allow rezoning. And the next time they want to build, you know, a addition to their garage, they have to build 10 units first. I mean, this is the weird, stupid conundrum, you know, that HCD has put us in, that actually de-incentivizes, you know, communities, you know, that have the majority of the properties, you know, improved, you know, to add housing. I'm only, you know, I'm only making this because it's clearly obvious, and it's the elephant in the room. I'm ready to vote.
Okay, let's let some other people speak. Nona?
I have to confess, I was thinking along similar lines for a variety of reasons. One is that if Dorothy Ford Park and open space is used as the gateway, why is it the gateway only on one side of the street? It seems to me that that same concept should apply to the other side of Alpine Road. And at the same time, it seems that if all of Westridge is off limits for solving the housing problem, that seems really kind of unfair to the rest of the town. And I sympathize with why they don't want to be part of the solution, but you know, I wonder how long this can really last. And I wonder if 3350 were rezoned, it would sort of open a door to a longer term rezoning process that would take a, you know, a longer look and a bigger overview than trying to solve this particular housing element cycle, but would sort of help ease that transition. I don't know. Those are some of my thoughts. I had been thinking about 3 parcels rather than 4, because I think the 4th, the one that's on the corner of Westridge, actually enters from Westridge, I believe. And so there are really only 3 that enter from Alpine, one of which has already had a parcel carved out of it. So I don't know. I realize everybody's going to get cold feet and say we can't go there, but that's what makes sense to me.
On the gateway concept, so in our housing element, the gateway actually does include both Dorothy Ford Park and the Ladera Church site. Originally with the idea that they could be combined and, you know, developed as one project. And yeah, so I think to me, that is it would be consistent for 3350 Alpine to be sort of combined with Dorothy Ford Park as part of this gateway concept that already exists in our housing element. Right, especially if it was in pursuit of having a combined development that kind of offloads some of the density from Dorothy Ford Park.
I've joked about this, but this would be similar, you know, to me on Willowbrook, rezoning my acre, you know, to 20 units an acre. I mean, nobody in his right mind is going to do that, Ronnie. You know, are you going to do that on yours? And, you know, and I'm going to do it on mine, and, you know, Jeff's going to do it on his, and, you know, and we'll create housing on Willowbrook. You know, I mean, this just doesn't make sense. You know,
So I guess how would you view a combined project on 3350 and Dorothy Ford Park? Let's say splitting either 25 units on each or something like 10 on one, 40 on the other.
I mean, right now, I think it'd be better to keep it in one place and do it all in one place.
Yeah, I have thoughts on that also. The problem with, I keep forgetting the name, 3350 Alpine is that, I'm assuming that's gonna cost the town a lot of money to buy that property out. And if we'd have thrown some extra money to split it into half, that's just a lot of money. I mean, and $4 million is your base price for an acre, here that's flat. I don't know exactly what that property is gonna be worth. And that would just drain our fund, and I just see that would be a misuse of our affordable housing at that kind of price point. And especially to split the affordable unit from, let's say, a 30 on one side, 20 on the other, that's gonna cost another, you know, $1 million, whatever. It just seems like financially unwise.
Just to understand your comment, you mean unwise to do 3350 at all, or to do a split, or?
Probably to do it at all. In any way. I'm going to preclude my vote, and I think all mine are 5 on that property.
Yeah,
No, I keep coming back to what our mission is here. And I think it's to find a 50-unit site that's ready to build, right? in the time frame that we have. So if we look at our list, these are all amazing opportunities for longer term development. I think they're all great and I'd like to see them all developed and, responsibly over time. But I think if what we look at today, I see 2 potential sites on here. That's it. Right? That's just my take on it.
As usual, Carter makes a stunning point about Skyline. And I think my ignorance is still vast on Skyline. I've studied every other lot, I think, in the entire Portola Valley pretty closely, and I know every inch of Portola Valley, but I'm not even sure where Portola Valley stops and starts. There's no signs up there that say entering Portola Valley, leaving Portola Valley. I think my only anecdotal information on why we happen to have this is that the Fogarty said this is the only opportunity. I mean, this is the only one that would work. I mean, it was sort of an offhand comment, but and that doesn't mean that it was fair to every other lot and every other person up there. I don't know that, and I wouldn't even venture to say they're not similar lots somewhere. I would ask Terrence whether we really need to change the zoning on every similar lot on Skyline. And if it's our due diligence to have to go in and look at
Mary,
what's
just to
similar.
check, I actually have done that along the Portola Valley properties, which are all east of Skyline. There aren't that many because there's the Fogarty, and then there's Midpan, El Mirador, and there's like one other small lot. So I agree with Carter's point because it's outside of Portola Valley also, there's other lots, but within Portola Valley, there isn't any more research to be done up there.
Thank God. I mean, just from the selfish point of view of this committee's work. That was a very good point. And I think we may have gotten lucky, as they say.
So with respect to this Fogarty property, I have a couple questions. Carter, you mentioned across the street with the Audubon Society, it's zoned as what?
It's in San
Conserved.
Mateo County. It's not in, it's inside of our sphere of influence, but not inside Portola Valley.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said it was zoned for a certain.
It's conserved. It's conserved.
okay,
There's a conservation easement that does not allow any development, nor does it allow the Bay Ridge Trail
Okay,
to go
I
through.
misunderstood his comment. So thank you. And then to the Fogarty folks that have been looking at this, there have been comments made that the Fogartys are trying to figure out their long-term plans. Is it worth discussing with them if they would want to zone all of those lots? I'm throwing it out there. I mean, this is what I'm hearing.
I would put it back to Terrence. Is that customary in this kind of situation? Maybe he's gone, but
No, I'm still here. And no, it's not necessary to rezone all the parcels to comply with the housing element law. You can zone a parcel for residential, even without it being surrounded by other residential.
But if the Fogartys were willing to rezone more than one parcel, that would be an option for us, correct?
Of course. No, I thought the question was, did you have to? And the answer is no.
Yeah,
Could
no,
you?
I
Yes.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I think this is a really interesting discussion. I think it's really good that we're thinking about all these things, and I think we need to continue to think that way. I do think we also have this task at hand. I think a little bit differently than Jocelyn in that we need to find a site or sites that can accommodate the 50 very low income units. So, but I think these comments are important and they should be brought to council as we're providing our comments. to them. That's sort of where I'm at with that.
I just wanted to finish with agreeing with Carter that the zoning laws are so counterintuitive with this minimum of 20 units per acre as your next step up, that there must be something in between. But being as it's so counterintuitive, I think there's potentially one situation where we will actually be able to use the counterintuitive philosophy to make a possibility happen, which is really hard for me to swallow because I'm a practical person. It's not.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite follow the
Well, I
last
think the
part of it.
counterintuitive part is that it also encumbers the property.
But you referenced one situation.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go any further because it's not, but it's.
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Not on this list.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Well, do we want to add options to Carter's point? Do we want to add an option that talks about rezoning those 3 or 4 properties?
We really may lose our housing opportunities, I believe, if we push that particular philosophy.
Okay.
First of all, I'm pretty sure Westridge, I know for a fact that it would blow up any possibility of cooperation. And also, I sort of think it would happen the same way on Skyline. If you started doing that on Skyline, I think you would lose the whole,
There isn't that much on
Basket.
Skyline.
yeah, it's sort of
But
been
I-
conserved.
From that point of view, I don't disagree. You know, the issue for me is, is whether this is good planning strategy, or just solving a problem. And I think that
Solving the problem.
We're just solving a problem. We're solving a very hard puzzle. That's all we're doing here. And we're kind of going off tangent. I think we should,
Yeah.
I would recommend that we just
We-
go ahead and vote and then we can.
Just didn't understand, was your question about Fogarty or was it about Alpine? I didn't understand what we were talking about. When you said, do we want to add an option to?
Well,
rezone the multiple- just which one was it?
no,
No option.
Okay, there we go. There's the
Oh.
answer. Because that's what he was talking about doing.
Which one, what was your question? Fogarty or Alpine?
He said both of them, so it would be both of them, but he's saying no because yeah,
Then people were commenting on, so, okay.
yeah,
But
sorry,
you're saying
Ron.
It's over. The pain
Okay.
is over.
Okay, are there, I know we want to vote. Do we want to make any specific comments about things in the proposal or we'll have time to modify those as we go?
So. So.
How are we
or
gonna vote?
What do you think about, what's the process we're going to vote and then what's going to happen after that? Are we going to submit this? Are we going to revisit our next meeting or?
I think
I
we
make a
should vote and
suggestion?
then talk about the results, of what it means,
Yes.
to the 7 of us. Because I think that the process, that, having interim votes, is really, to help ferret out, where we agree and where we don't.
I would agree. And I would propose that we vote and then in our next meeting, we follow up with a discussion and, that we work on that. You have a question, Ronnie?
Sorry. Betsy had recommended, had the idea of adding a vote on Dorothy Ford Park for some fewer number of units, let's say 10 or whatever people want. Do people want to add that or not?
I think at this time it'd be better because I spent some time figuring out what my votes are. Not that they're that complicated, but that any changes to this list, let's do that in the next meeting. Because trying to do these things on the fly and kind of going, oh, without a response is a little difficult. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, let's vote. Go on, Karen.
How do we want to vote? Is it, we want to do person by person like last time or each item and then everyone provide their.
Let's do it row by row. So item 1, item 2, item 3. And Ronnie, if you, because you've got that on a spreadsheet, if you can get that to Patty for the minutes when it's
Forward to
filled.
me?
Yes, please.
Or if you can share your screen, yeah.
Yeah, share your screen, but okay.
You're gonna do the math on the fly?
If he's got it on his spreadsheet, the average should show up.
Should calculate
Right?
itself.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just see where we're at, guys.
After the.
Item 1, recommend one site for 50 units. Carter.
2,
Oh, I'm sorry, Ronnie.
I just wanted to pull up some. notes from this.
Okay.
2.
Jocelyn. Karen, I have down as 3. Karen Vatra.
1.
Mary.
1.
Nona.
And I'll say 1.
Okay. And I might change my mind because of the Fogarty stuff, but this is what I brought to the meeting. Okay. Number 2, 2 to 3 sites for about 50 units.
2,
Jocelyn?
Wait till Ronnie's ready.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
All right, I'm going to stick with my initial assumption that we're looking for 50 unit sites. So I'll say 5.
Okay. I have down 1.
I have 5.
Okay. Mary?
3.
Okay. Nona?
2.
Ronnie?
2.
Okay. Item number 3, approximately 5 sites for the 50 units. Carter?
1,
1? Okay, Jocelyn?
5.
Okay. I have a 4. Karen Vatra? Mary?
3.
Nona?
3.
Ronnie?
5.
Number 4, recommend 3350 Alpine Road for 50 units.
5,
Jocelyn?
5.
I have a 3. Karen Vatra?
5.
Mary?
Well, I'm voting a 6, but I'm.
Are you abstaining?
Can't reach, you can't vote.
Okay, abstaining.
You
Nona?
can put me down as
2.
either.
I'm sorry, what did you?
I apologize, Karen. What was
I
your vote?
said 5.
5, 5, 3, 5, and then
No,
abstain.
Mary has to be abstaining.
And then
Why don't
2
we go along the same order for me?
2,
Yeah, we are.
and
Nona was a 2 and Ronnie?
4.
4. Okay, 3350 Alpine Road for 10.
Sorry, for Mary, I think I should not record a 4. It's not only, yeah, because you're conflicted on the site.
Apparently.
So I'll just leave it blank. That's fine. Okay.
That's probably better. Yeah. Okay, number 5, 3350 Alpine Road for 10 to 25 units, joint development with Dorothy Ford Park and open space.
5,
6.
I have 4.
I have 5.
Mary?
Skipping this.
Abstain. Okay. Nona?
5.
Ronnie?
3.
Oh, I screwed something up. My 4s should be 5s. Is the
Okay.
4 is abstain, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sorry. You can go up and
Well,
change. Okay,
Yeah.
it's okay. All
1
right,
to 3 is
number
a yes,
6.
4 doesn't count anymore.
I mean, personally, when I use 4, I'm also using something in between. 3 and
Yeah, that's
5.
what I was
I know, but
doing.
it's
Okay.
nice to have an
Number,
option where you
number
don't
6, 3350 road, 3350 Alpine for less than 10 units.
Wait, I'm sorry. Do you want to change your votes? I want to make sure I have it right.
Just leave them as 4s for now. I brought them in that way, but You're saying that that's like in between a 3 and a 5, so that's where I wanted them.
But they end up being, your
Yeah.
final vote does not count.
Okay.
So it's really an
What do you mean it doesn't count?
It's
I mean,
gonna
I think we're
average
gonna have
out.
an average.
Summary.
Isn't it gonna average?
In the summary,
Summary
yes,
is gonna
no.
be, well, okay, yes.
It turns out the math is complicated.
Okay,
Yeah, I guess I don't like that.
okay, so I would change, okay, let's go to line 3. I would make that one a 3. And then, I would make them, and I would make number 5 a 5. I
Okay.
have to
But
differentiate.
I have a 4 and, I mean, I don't feel like I'm abstaining. I just
I know, this is,
feel like it's between 3 and 5.
I just copied.
How about
Midpen,
3.5?
so-
Yeah, come on.
Sorry, what?
I just
You-
copied Midpen. They do that. Well, I didn't on the
That
abstain.
one you
On
added,
the, no,
right?
on Midpen, 4 meant a yes. And I thought that was just too strong. It's still supportive of it. So I felt more comfortable with a 4 being abstain and not a no.
Maybe in the summary, it could be some word other than abstain. Like,
Well, let's figure
Neutral
out
or-
that at the next
Average it.
meeting.
Can't we just average the numbers?
That's-
Just average the numbers. Let's go. Come on.
well, maybe
Okay.
use-
well, that might work.
Row 7,
Okay, row,
I-
we're on
I
row
feel like we
6.
can use
5,
4 as a vote.
Let's not change it
Okay.
right now.
All right. This is initial and this will
Yes.
change. Everybody understands. Okay, so
Okay.
Carter, number 6, you said 5.
yes, 5.
Jocelyn? 6. I have 5. Karen V.
I have 5.
Nona.
5.
Ronnie.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, me.
Mary should be blank.
Oh. Okay, Mary's is blank. So it's going across, it's 5, 6, 5, 5, abstain, 5,
Five,
and
it
then
is 5.
you. Okay. Number 7, 19501 Skyline, the Fogarty property for 50 units.
3,
3.
I'm sorry, you said 3, Jocelyn?
Yes.
Hmm.
1.
I'm a 1.
Wait, Mary.
Yeah.
Sorry, Karen.
I'm a
Mary,
1.
I'm a 3.
Mary, 1. No.
1.
I'm a 2.
Number 8. Oh, I had a question on this. Can this be more than 10 units? Could this be 10 to 25? I mean, it seems too low. But I did have a question on this one. It seemed,
Can we discuss that next week, please?
Yeah, let's just finish this form.
okay. Number 8,
2,
5.
Where
was I 6? I'm sorry, I can't remember. I think I'm a 6.
for 10 units, I'm going to say 6.
I'm a 6 also.
I'm a 5.
2.
You're on number 8?
Yeah. What do I want to vote? So. Let's say 3.
Recommend Blue Oaks strip. No, I wanted to ask why this is even on here because we never
5.
discussed this. Okay, 5.
5.
Okay. I had a 5.
I had a 5.
I'm a 6.
5.
I'll say 5. And yeah, we can decide to remove them if you want.
What?
Okay, recommend, we'll probably remove self, recommend Christchurch for approximately 10 very low income units. It's row 10.
1,
5.
1,
5.
1.
Sorry. 5. Can someone?
oh yeah,
double
it's
check
1,
what's-
5,
5,
1,
1.
5, 1.
Right.
And Nona,
1.
1, so 2 1s, and Ronnie.
2.
Okay. Number 11, recommend TC substation for approximately 10 units.
3,
5,
2.5. Is that possible?
Sure.
6.
1. Oh, wait, no, 5.
Karen Batra?
Yeah, Karen Batra was a 6.
So that was a 5.
2,
5.
Number 12, recommend TC soccer field plus substation for 50 units.
5,
2,
4.5. Uh-huh.
3.
5.
5,
Yeah, I was going to say, I knew you'd be a 6 on that one. Recommend Hawthorne's Historic Complex for approximately 5 units.
2,
5,
1,
6.
1.
1,
5.
all right, last one, recommend Dorothy Ford Park for 50 units. No, mine.
5,
Jocelyn?
2,
I'm a 5.
I guess I'm a 2.
6,
4.1.
Okay.
I'll say 4. I'm probably, I guess, it's going to decide if my 4 is a 3.9 or 4.
could you enlarge it so that we can see the averages?
Okay.
The green, the darker the green, the higher the rank. And the darker the orange, the lower the rank. So
So we agree that 50, 50 unit sites are better.
yeah, and then
At Skyline Boulevard for 50 units.
and Christchurch are,
Okay, so we should focus on, the Fogarty property for 50 units.
well,
I
and
mean, that clearly is what this assessment, has proven.
well, and this
I
is,
disagree. Go ahead.
All right,
Go
just quickly,
Well-
to make sure I have this right. Mary, I think I should delete this one, right? 3350.
Delete it, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And-
Jamie.
remember that we're going to the council with a list and they'll see this, they'll see how people voted, they'll see what the consensus is or what it isn't. I mean, I do think that there's more information that we want to get about Fogarty. So I think, Carter, your point about seeing what we can get there. I think there are a few more outstanding conversations and site assessments that we're trying to look at that hopefully we can bring to the meeting in the next 2 weeks. And Jocelyn, go ahead. I know you wanted to say something.
No, I just think we're kind of going in our own circles, right? Because if we look at this list and you look at what's green and what's red, like if you think about what is actually available to build on or to agree on in the next couple months, the Fogarty property is great for development long-term, but I don't understand how we could get that agreed to, rezoned, doing everything we need to do for a 50 development unit within the next couple months. Like, to me, that's not realistic. I'm not saying that I don't like the site, but that's why I respectfully disagree with you that that's the site that we should all focus on. Because I think it's not realistic if we come back to what our goal is here, is to find a 50-unit site that is easily, readily available.
I will agree with Jocelyn because my votes were not like, I like this site or I think that's the best, but I voted higher for Dorothy because that's the only thing that we have right now. And maybe Fogarty will happen, but so I had to vote that lower. And that's not that I like Dorothy, but there's, not much out there. So to me, it's a very practical, pragmatic vote, not based upon what I want to have happen in an ideal world.
Well, Okay, I have a difference of opinion in listening to Nona and Mary, who have had the conversations with Fogarty and listening to Terrence and asking those questions of, is this doable? I got the impression it was within the time frame that we had. So I'd like to ask Terrence again what your thoughts are, because if this isn't feasible, I would completely agree. Maybe we shouldn't be focusing on it. But Terrence, what are your thoughts when you look at that Fogarty property?
Yes. So, well, first of all, just in terms of what the timeframes that you need to accomplish are, you need to find a site and send out an RFP to find a developer for the site. If the find, meaning locate, not buy, but find, and then you have until 2030 to actually start development of the site. So within that, it's certainly feasible to do the Fogarty property.
Does anyone have any?
You don't even have to put it
Questions?
together. No, that's really clear, Terrence. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That helps a lot.
Okay.
You can change, the other thing I don't understand completely, Terrence, well, there's a lot I don't understand about zoning, but I don't understand whether the town can just go ahead and change zoning without consulting owners and how that works.
I'm not
Well, no,
answering-
you need to consult the owners, obviously, and it's technically feasible to change the zoning of a property without the owner's consent, as long as you give them an opportunity to be heard. However, in practice, particularly in Portola Valley, that's just not done. The property owner consents to the rezoning. Again, it's not required, but let's talk about what our practice actually is. And essentially, our practice includes the owner sponsoring, if not at least consenting to the zoning change.
Okay, so the specific that I have in mind is the 5 acres behind the soccer field, where there's multiple owners, it would be extremely complicated to get a consent. It's even hard to get an opinion. I guess the issue there is that there's no lot and you can't subdivide it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, no, it's not that you can't subdivide it. It is challenging, and particularly if the owners aren't interested, it's particularly challenging.
Can I ask one more question about the Fogarty property? It's like, what makes us think that the Fogartys are just going to say, yes, you can have this big plot of land for $8 million to develop on? Like why do we think that's a feasible assumption, that something that can happen in the next?
All we have to
time
do
period?
is get their permission to do the RFP. We don't have to buy it.
So Jocelyn, another scenario could be that we rezone it so it can be developed and a developer buys the property.
Yes.
The town does not have to buy the property.
There's also the caution that they don't have sewer, and HCD may not like that property enough because it's far away from services, it's far away from schools, it's far away from grocery stores. So they may not prefer it over Dorothy. So that's just another risk that I can't rate it super high because of these unknowns. So I'm not rating things based on idealism. I'm trying to mix it with some pragmatism.
They're going to have a Starbucks.
Terrence, to your knowledge, does HCD get down to the level of whether there's sewer or not? I mean, there's a tremendous number of towns and cities, not cities, towns like ours. And I thought that it was really about the things I wrote about the criteria of property owner interest, the number of units on the site, and things like that. But are they going to get into the nitty gritty of, is it that developable?
The criteria that you're referencing are their highest priorities, but they do look at the feasibility of a project. So if a project's going to require the extension of a sewer line for 2 miles, then that's going to make it economically prohibitive. So yes, they will look at those factors, but it doesn't preclude the site. It just they're really trying to not have sites that are impossible to develop, right?
Yeah.
So you don't say, well, I'm not going to give hypotheticals, but yes, they do consider it, but only in terms of its feasibility.
Okay. And buildings could go up there without sewer, with a leach field.
Conceivably, but
Okay.
I don't know where the nearest. More likely, it would be a small sewer plant that would go in rather than a leach field in today's world.
Okay.
I mean,
All right.
50 units is a lot of sewer usage.
Yeah. I know Alpine Hills is on sewer, and that's a lot of usage. Okay, so we need to open this up for public comment. Well, the vote, oh, you're right. I guess we did because we talked about the proposal. Okay, great. Thank you. Even better, Ronnie. Thank you. All right, item D, formation of subcommittees if necessary. I don't think. Go ahead.
Well, maybe just to clarify our next steps with this, is what? So discuss again in our next meeting or?
Okay, so that's item E, but yes,
Oh, it
so,
is? Okay.
I- in my mind, and I'd love for people to speak up, that, next steps are to obviously take this home, think about what we've learned. There's going to be more conversations. I'm hoping we learn more about Fogarty, maybe about 3350 as well. And then we will have a more robust discussion and think about, the other thing with next steps is to think about the comments that you would want to make as your individual comments that will go to council. That's very important that everybody have their own individual comments. Okay?
I had one thing, if we're really commenting on this, which is, could we possibly have put on there Hawthorne's 15? To see whether the pressure was sufficiently high on the open space people to do worker housing that they would just have to. As one option.
I agree with Mary.
Okay, well, let's add it for the next time.
For the next time, yeah.
If you have something, I believe this is not a Brown Act violation. If you have something that you want to add, go to Ronnie directly, correct?
Well, better to do it here because.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm
I
just saying
wouldn't have
there,
gotten that from.
I think we all leave the meeting and we think, oh, I should have said this or I should have
Yeah.
asked that, if it's something like that.
Does anyone want to just vote on this right now?
Ay, ay,
Hawthorne's
ay.
50?
One,
August 1st.
It's so hard because it's an amazing site and I want 150, but I know, but that's huge and it's got all these properties, things that are falling down. It's like such an amazing site, but we can't, it's not available for us in the time frame we're looking at. That's my struggle. It's not that I don't think it's an amazing site and we should vote on it so in this context of needing 50 units available soon, even though I love the site for building, I'll say 5.
I'm a 5.
I'm a 6. I was on the Mid-Penn POG and that's just not going to happen. It's completely unrealistic in this time frame.
I guess I'm a 2.
I'm a 5. Yeah, I think it's not feasible with their conservation easement.
That's where I am. I'd love to see more on that property, but I just don't think it's feasible either. Okay.
To me, it's interesting looking at that list. We only, can I say something? Mary?
Karen?
One meeting, please. I think everybody, if Ronnie, you can email this just to everybody so that we can think about for next meeting, for those of you who want to continue to have discussions on some of these items, that you need more support. And we only really have support for if we could build 50 units at Fogarty and that will work out. That's the only one that really came out as a yes. So consider that. So I don't want us to be spending a lot of time talking about things that aren't going to happen. We have better things to do with our staff time and our own time.
So, so I'll update I've already updated this slide in the presentation. I'll send that to Karen for the next agenda packet. And then if anyone wants to send me comments ahead of time, I'll include them, or else we can talk about it and have them during the meeting. But yeah, if anyone sends me the comment that they want on this page in the report, I'll include that.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And again, it can be a draft. It does not have to be your final comments.
Ronnie, while you're on that page before, can you just add to mine, available soon? Thanks.
Okay. Okay, the next item is the formation of subcommittees if necessary, and I think we don't need that, but it's there as our placeholder. Next steps, item 5E, I believe we've covered. So I just want to open it up because we had those agenda items if there's any comments from the public.
I'll give another moment for any hands to be raised.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Item 6 is just, I wanted to share my findings on what seems to be commonalities in justifying suitability for HCD as we move forward. And item 6B, Terrence, do you have any update on our RENA status? I think that's due on April 1st. And just wondering if you can share anything with us.
There's actually no particular due date. It's just it's aiming that direction. No, we're trying to find a surveyor who can create a parcel from Dorothy Ford Park. That's where we're at, and we won't hear anything from HCD until we've done that. I will say that Portola Valley's concern about this process is not unique. And in fact, the state legislature is working on a ordinance, a piece of legislation to require an audit of the process that was used through the in the housing element certification process. So we're not the only people crying foul.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. I was actually asking more about the RENA quota and our status to date.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yes, but before April, we will have a housing element update, a report on how our status report is on the housing element. Yes.
Okay.
It'll come to the council in March.
All right, thank you. Are there any public comments?
Christy C., please go ahead.
Yeah, I thought HCD was also on a timeline of 60 days, which would have been 12/18/24. Am I incorrect by thinking that?
Christy, Terrence, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Terrence explained that we have sent a letter to the HCD saying that we will be complying, but we need to getting the surveyor so we can rezone the property. So we have not completed those pieces yet. Is that correct, Terrence?
That is correct.
Thank you. All right. We have another hand up.
Phone number
Hi.
ending
It's Dana. I wanted to correct what I said about 3350 is not in a flood zone. I have like 5 piles of papers on my desk and I was looking at something, and anyway, I know you guys already recognize that, but I wanted to say that publicly. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Is there anybody else, Emily? Okay, thank you. I just want to take a moment to thank all of you for all of the work that you're putting in and the time. And I know that everybody's doing a lot of research and it's tough sometimes to not have the resources, but it's really appreciated, and keep up the great work. And meeting adjourned. Where's the gavel?